Jeff, my friend, thank you so much again for being the co-host and the honor and benefits of being the co-host on Local Biz Now. You get to introduce the guests that you have brought, my friend, so the floor is yours.
All right. Well, it's a pleasure being here, Joe, and I just it's great to be in the if you will, the shadow of greatness and a celebrity on the show, and one of our true business leaders in the community. And John Marrino is here with us in studio this morning. He's the owner of Olde Mecklenburg Brewery, OMB, as it's commonly known. When you become just known by initials, you've made the big time.
You have arrived.
Indeed. So why don't, John, we would like you to take the floor. Tell us a little bit about your story and your company.
Well, we're almost 8 years old now. Basically, when I left my former job, our company got acquired, and I decided to do something different with myself.
I hear that story often.
Yeah, I didn't know what I was going to do, and I was on a camping trip out in Montana, and I realized Charlotte didn't have a brewery. It was actually the largest city in the United States without its own brewery at the time. And so I said, well, I'm going to come back and make beer for Charlotte. And
had you made beer before, like homebrew or anything, or?
No, I like to say I did it backwards. I decided to open a brewery, and I said I better learn how to brew beer. So the first thing I did was bought a homebrew kit, converted my garage into a brewery, and spent the next year writing my business plan, scratching up some money from people, mostly myself.
Friends and family type money?
Yeah, friends, family, neighbors.
that tasted the beer and liked it.
Yeah,
that was okay.
Yeah. And about a year and a half later, we got open. March 2009. We'll celebrate our 8th anniversary this month.
Same location where you are now?
No, we actually started in in my garage. Then we moved to a little tiny 1,400 square foot warehouse, and then we moved to our last location at 215 Southside Drive, which is now Sugar Creek Brewing Company. And when we bought the location we're at on Yancey now, we sold that to them. And so now we have 2 breweries on the street.
And how much space do you have, and what kind of how did you acquire equipment and start scaling?
Well, it was just a gradual process. We started off, obviously on day one, we were standing there looking at each other, and we didn't have any customers. And we had all this beer in the tanks, and we were like, hopefully we can sell some of this stuff. But it was just gradual, step by step. And slowly we built accounts, sold to restaurants and bars, added more employees, kept growing. Today we have about 650 restaurant and bar accounts around town.
So what were some of the barriers, hurdles from start up out of your garage to actually convincing a restaurant to put your beer on a tap? What goes through that in that process?
Well, the first thing is taste. We go around and sample them and let them taste it, and our product was apparently well received. So Copper is now our flagship. Copper is now the #1 selling craft beer in Charlotte.
It's in my fridge at home.
John, let me ask you a question. I've sold a few of these small microbreweries, and what I've learned now is that literally, if you say it's local, the establishment wants to try and find a way to put it in. Did it start that way? That initial conversation, how did that go? Was it as easy as it is now? Because now, I got to be honest with you, it looks like it's pretty easy to, if you can produce it, a local bar would like to have it on its tap. How did that start? Was it that easy?
No. Well, I think it's come full circle. So it started off, when we first started, we were the only guys in town. There was a lot of skepticism. We were kind of banging our head against the door a little bit. And I like to say that local will get you the first beer.
Right.
Good will get you the second beer.
Great
and so,
statement.
It's very important that your product be good. And and then we did shift to, people would just put on anything that opened up locally. Now I think that's changing a little bit. Now there are more breweries around, there's more competition, and now people are saying, well, it has to be good. I'm not going to put it on if it's not going to sell.
Well, one thing we're seeing now, the craft brewery as an industry, if you will, is starting to flourish. Any sense what's driving that, why that's happening?
Well, right now it's momentum, but
Because there's a lot of drunks in North Carolina.
no. Well, the thing is, once upon a time, all beer was local.
Right.
You know, back in the 1850s,
Interesting.
there were over 4,000 breweries in the U.S. All beer was local because beer is liquid bread. It's a perishable product.
You taught me the best is just like bread. It's best when it's fresh out of the oven.
That's right. And our ovens are our lager tanks. So the fresher it is, the better it is. And local beer is fresh beer. So then what happened is Prohibition. And following Prohibition, the big breweries mopped up all the breweries in the country. And by the 1970s, we only had about 40 in the entire country. Then the craft beer movement started in the late 1970s, early 80s. And today we have over 5,000 breweries, actually about 5,200 breweries again. And it's become a local product again.
And North Carolina is leading that industry right now. I mean, there's just a bunch of new microbreweries in the area.
Yeah, but that's one thing I like to tell people about. That's a little bit misleading. What's great is we have a lot of breweries. What's bad is that we're all very small. And so the actual amount of production being produced here is only about 4% of what's consumed in North Carolina. 96% of our beer is imported. And that creates a huge wealth transfer out of the state. And there's no reason a large percent of it can't be made here. The beautiful thing about breweries is that we're manufacturing companies. And when we manufacture beer and sell it to the local restaurant, all the money stays in the local community. It gets recycled into payroll for our employees, taxes. We have to build more facilities, so we hire subcontractors. We buy our boxes from local vendors, our labels from local vendors. So it's a huge investment recycling in the community, and I think there's a lot more potential for that in the future since we're such a small percentage of the total volume being sold in the state.
Well, John, you made a comment that's a natural segue. You talk about growth, and as you expand, you create jobs. Tell us a little bit about your recent announcement in Cornelius.
Yeah, well, we found a great location in Cornelius, almost in downtown. It's about 24 acres. It's an old industrial facility. That company built a new factory in Mooresville and moved out, and we were able to acquire that from them. And on the 24 acres is about 17 acres of woods and a 51,000 square foot building, which we intend to convert into our second brewery as well as a second brewhouse and beer garden for the Lake District.
And wait. We got to back up here for a minute. So what you're saying is Jeff allowed a business to move to Iredell County. Is that what that's what this story is? Is that what's happened here?
Oh, no, because they're staying up in our backyard. Yeah.
No, I'm talking about the company that he took their space
Oh,
from.
that's true.
Well, they were boxed in. I think they needed more
moved.
space
Yeah,
than
no,
the land could handle.
I just wanted the opportunity to pick on my
He
senator.
just definitely does.
Yeah.
So tell us about the vision for how do you expand? What impediments do you have to be able to expand? And how do you look to accomplish or overcome those kinds of barriers?
Yeah, the show's only an hour long. We don't have enough time to list
Yeah.
the stuff he's got to go through.
Well, the one big impediment we have is the North Carolina law limiting our ability to self-distribute our beer, and that's we did 21,300 barrels last year. This year we're going to hit the cap of 25,000. We're not going to go over the cap. I will not sell more than 25,000 barrels because at 25,000 barrels, state law forces me to transfer the ownership of my brand to another third-party private company, when I don't want to.
Right.
And
so hopefully our listeners and our business owners are hearing this. This is a classic example where government gets in the way and is over-regulating.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
And frankly, we're waiting to see what happens with this law before we decide what to do with Cornelius because, it'll dictate whether I can keep growing or whether I have to stop at 25, and then that's going to really affect what we can invest up there.
Translates into less jobs, less revenue for the economy and growth and
Absolutely.
all the good things that come with
Well,
business.
and the bottom line is let the man make as much as he wants to make and sell as much as he wants to sell. That's just the bottom line.
Yeah, it's not like here's the thing. We're only about 1.4% of the Charlotte beer market. So we're not even a rounding error on the North Carolina beer market, and that's my cap for the entire state.
Wow.
And so in the meantime, the people that I have to transfer it over to right now control 98% of the beer sold in the state. the wholesale distributors. And apparently 98% is not sufficient. They want the other 2% that is controlled by small guys like me. So
now, John, the good news is you are sitting next to the senator that just got to tell me he's getting a little bit of power. So I think you're sitting in the right spot to get this corrected.
Well, this is definitely an issue that's on the forefront in Raleigh, and it's something we need to address because it impacts so many small businesses and entrepreneurs. And again, what we said earlier, it's really the role we should have as elected officials is to get government out of the way of businesses so they can do things which is innovate, create jobs, the things that government doesn't do.
And listen, I'm a deal guy, so I don't question why a deal ended up the way it ended. I'm sure there was a good reason for this law, 40 years ago, right?
Prohibition. It's prohibition's where the three-tier.
Right. But now you've got to correct this stuff. This should be an easy fix and allow an entire industry to flourish.
Oh, but we're talking politics now. Easy doesn't always enter into the equation.